Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, while we read his book, Confessions. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. We enter into St. Augustine's boyhood today, where he talks about how he learned language. We'll be reading from Book 1, Chapter 8. Please open to page 29. The next stage in my life as I grew up was boyhood. Or would it be truer to say that boyhood overtook me and followed upon my infancy? Not that my infancy left me, for if it did, where did it go? All the same, it was no longer there, because I ceased to be a baby unable to talk and was now a boy with the power of speech. I can remember that time, and later on I realized how I learnt to speak. It was not my elders who showed me the words by some set system of instruction, in the way that they taught me to read not long afterwards, but instead, I taught myself by using the intelligence which you, my God, gave to me. For when I tried to express my meaning by crying out, making various sounds and movements, so that my wishes should be obeyed, I found that I could not convey all that I meant, and to make myself understood by everyone whom I wished to understand me. So my memory prompted me. I noticed that people would name some object, and then turn towards whatever it was that they had named. I watched them and understood that the sound they made when they wanted to indicate that particular thing was the name which they gave to it, and their actions clearly showed what they meant. For there is a kind of universal language consisting of expressions of the face and eyes, gestures and tones of voice, which can show whether a person means to ask for something and get it, or refuse it and have nothing to do with it. So, by hearing words arranged in various phrases and constantly repeated, I gradually pieced together what they stood for, and when my tongue had mastered the pronunciation, I began to express my wishes by means of them. In this way, I made my wants known to my family, and they made theirs known to me, and I took a further step into the stormy life of human society, although I was still subject to the authority of my parents and the will of my elders. There's one part of this reading today that reminds me of a conversation I had with a person on Instagram about the definition of a table. St. Augustine says, quote, "It was not my elders who showed me the words by some set system of instruction in the way that they taught me to read not long afterwards, but instead, I taught myself by using the intelligence which you, my God, gave to me. I noticed that people would name some object and then turn towards whatever it was that they had named. I watched them and understood that the sound they made when they wanted to indicate that particular thing was the name which they gave to it." Unquote. Now, I explained this very reality to the person I was debating online, and I thought I'd share that conversation with you today. I had seen a meme on Instagram created by Young America's Foundation, which quoted Ben Shapiro, and it said, "Men cannot be women, women cannot be men, men who believe they are women are not real women." And so I commented, "Still baffling that this has to be underscored." This man showed up that was going to set me straight on language and definitions. He commented to me, quote, "That's because you're taking a broad category as self-evident when in reality it's not. Language is incredibly complicated. For instance, when you think of the category of a table, can you define table in a way that excludes everything strictly not a table, while simultaneously including everything that is a table? Does a table have to be a certain height? Must it have 4 legs, or can it have 3? Is it just something to lay things on? Do tables exist in nature? If I sit on a table, does it become a chair?" And I was like, boy, this guy really has thought a lot about tables. The broad category he is referring to here is the quote-unquote broad category of sex, though I'd wager he'd probably say gender. Biological sex is not a broad category, but we'll shelf that for just a moment. At first, when he started talking about all this table business, my first reaction was, wow, this is bizarre. Then, as I thought about it, I saw what he was trying to do. He was trying to trap me into giving a definition of a table, which he therefore could find an exception to that definition. And my first wrong move was that I fell for the trap. And the reason I fell for it is because what a table is obvious. The only way he was able to ask me all those questions is because he and I have an understanding of what a table is and isn't. The fact that we're even using the word table means that we know what it is. Language is only complicated when you don't understand it. And he obviously understands English quite well, as I do, and therefore we both have an understanding of what a table is. So I replied back and I said, when I say, let's eat at the table, do you have any confusion and wonder what I'm talking about? No, you don't. You don't ask for clarification or wonder at what I mean. You might ask which one, if there's more than one around, but you don't need me to clarify more than that because we all know exactly what a table is. It's not a chair, it's not a couch. Tables may come in different sizes and shapes, but the purpose and the general build is the same. Flat top structure with legs meant generally to eat or work at. And boom, right there, I gave him a definition for him to play around with, which he did. It wasn't necessarily bad for me to give him a definition because words have meanings, dictionaries are useful for a reason, but his goal was to get me to give a definition so that he could find an example of something that's not a table but could sort of fit the definition. He wanted to find an exception to the rule, thus apparently proving me wrong. So his counter was, we as humans falsely assume that categories are far more rigidly defined than they actually are. You basically just admitted yourself when you said tables come in different shapes and sizes. What shape constitutes a table? When does a table stop being a table and become a chair? If it's generally meant to eat or work at, does that mean anything that I eat or work at is a table? He then went on to tell me that tables in Japan are different than here in America. Well, duh, they still serve the same purpose. And that Amazon tribesmen may not even have a concept of a table, so how would it be defined to them? As if the fact that they don't have a concept of a table, maybe, what does that mean? Tables don't exist then? What he was trying to get at is that tables can't really be defined as structures with a flat top and legs that we gather around because what about beds? What about piano benches? What about bookshelves? What about TV stands? In his mind, since all those things have flat tops and legs and we could gather around them, they must also be tables. In essence, his argument says either one, tables don't exist because they can't be defined, or two, basically anything can be a table, which also means tables don't exist. A dog with a flat back and legs is a table. You see where this is going? What he is trying to prove is that anyone can be a woman because women come in all shapes and sizes and looks. Because they do, how can you ever really pin down a definition for one? However, the word woman can be rigidly defined, even more so than a table. A woman is an adult human with XX chromosomes and a body ordered towards pregnancy. Yes, women come in many shapes, sizes, races, looks, and they come with different personalities, but they all share XX chromosomes and they have bodies ordered towards pregnancy. This does not mean that they will all get pregnant, but their bodies are ordered that way. I then asked my newfound friend if he had any children. He replied that he didn't. Of course not. I explained to him that I did, and that in teaching my children to speak English, I didn't get out a dictionary and read to them the definitions of things, just like St. Augustine explained. To teach them what a table was, I showed them a table. Its attributes spoke for itself. I also would show them a cat, and then I would say, cat. I showed them a shoe, And then I would say shoe. And as they got older and had a better grasp on nouns, I added in adjectives to more rigidly define different types of tables. Dining tables, poker tables, card tables, end tables, folding tables. The adjective gives more description, but they all have a similar essence about them, which is tableness. Tableness is not the same as chairness. Yes, I could sit on a table, but that doesn't make it a chair. I could eat off a chair like a table, but it would be bothersome, messy, and uncomfortable because it's not designed for that. Just because I could possibly pretend that a chair is a table doesn't make it so. Just like a man that dresses up and tries to look like a woman doesn't make him a woman. The reality is that, yes, there are lots of types of tables. But this is where the category thing actually destroys his point. Categories help us to rigidly define things even more to bring about more meaning and understanding. A desk is a type of table, but we've separated it out from just a normal eating table. With inanimate objects, there are lots of things that could pose as another inanimate object. Not with living things, though. A cat can never be a dog or pose as one. A butterfly can never be a bird, yet both fly. An oak tree can never be a sunflower, even though they are both plants. And to add another category, a female cat can never be a male cat. What this guy and so many others with this line of thinking ignore are adjectives, similes, and metaphors, and basic reality. They do it on purpose in order to confuse and try to sound overly intelligent by talking about the quote-unquote false assumptions we all make and how some things quote-unquote aren't self-evident. But he's wrong and he knows it. He does not live his life wondering at the definition of every single thing and assuming everything can be pretty much anything. He knows a bookshelf is not a table based on attributes he can distinguish. Helen Keller's early life is a perfect example of what this kind of confusion creates, a world that is meaningless and void of purpose. Because she grew up blind and deaf, she could not understand that things have specific words attached to them. She was in the dark and could not communicate with her parents, leaving everyone frustrated and miserable. Once Anne Sullivan, her teacher, unlocked the world of words to her, she was brought into the light of clarity and understanding. She then went on to thrive in the world. Finally, at the end of our conversation, I got smart and asked him for his definition of a table. And you want to know what he said? He said, "I'll use your definition." Oh, what a cop-out. But hey, we parted on friendly terms. Since St. Augustine talked about learning to speak today and about language, I thought I'd share that conversation as it seemed relevant to what many of us experience in our very confused world. But that is all for today. I'll see you back here tomorrow, and until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.